Ahoy YouTube! It's Professor Mimi from Card Fight Crash Course with something a little different today. I'm going to try doing a tournament report, which is something I remember from the Pokemon community a long time ago. This isn't going to be a big report on a BCS or anything, it's just from a short local tournament. Over the weekend we had the Fireworks Cup, which was a constructed cup for the new set 10, I believe. The one with the new Seraph Clearlight, the one with the new Leonorn, the one with the new Chris Rain, there's Crowwind. If you're not familiar with the Constructed Cup, every now and again when a new set comes up, different shops are selected by Bushiroad to host a special tournament where the only grade 3 cards you can ride are from the new set. Sometimes if you are being supported with like the crossover dress deck, where they received a bunch of new cards that were stand out for them, but they didn't receive a new grade 3, Bushiroad will let you still play anyway. So the Java was legal for this weekend that we just played. I was feeling pretty confident that even if I wasn't going to win, my partner Alicia would, and then one of us would be able to come home with the mat. But alas, I was not able to pull through. I made one tiny little mistake and it snowballed into something truly unfortunate. Not really too much I could do about it, but there was one little thing, and I feel like at this point in my career, if I can be learning something substantial from a simple weekend of playing cards at locals, that's a big step for me. So I figured I would share what I learned with y'all. Just some simple tech. I'm also going to be trying a different format with the way I present the cards. I always include a deck log in the video description, and getting this camera to work well with holding up the cards can be quite challenging, so I'm not going to hold up the cards onto the screen for you to read. If you would like to read any of the cards in the deck, there's a link to deck log in the description, which if you are unfamiliar with any of the cards I mentioned that aren't in the deck, you can try using the search feature in deck log to find them. Like a card I'll mention, I believe is called like Happy Dreaming Festa or something like that. It's a grade 3 normal order that lets you counterblast 1 to check the top 7 cards of your deck for 2 or less grade 1 or less cards and call them to rearguard. I saw from doing some research that was a hot tech some people were trying, but it didn't seem like the kind of card I like to play, so I stayed away from it. Before we dive in too deep, I just want to say, make sure to like the video and leave a comment to help me out. It has been scientifically proven to propagate small channels like this through the algorithm. If you like this at all, don't hesitate. If you press that little button, the little thumbs up, it'll save this video in your playlists of liked videos, so it'll be easier to find in the future, because YouTube has a habit of burying all sorts of stuff. So if it's in a repository like that, it could be easier to find in the future. And I know a lot of people don't stick around to the end of my ramblings, so I should mention it before we get started. But that's all the preamble. We can get started into the meat. What deck I was playing, it seemed a little silly, but for locals it's quite alright. We didn't pull a playset of the new Leonorn Tramud. I should have looked up how to say it. But the new Leonorn is quite good, per se, compared to the old one anyway. However, she's not strictly better, as I found out in one of my games. And you don't need to have a whole playset of her. So even though I only pulled 2, I just decided to put one in my ride deck and still base the deck around the cross ride sort of Leonorn Vivace, where she'll let you stand 3 units and give them +5, whereas this lets you stand 2 and give +10. So it gives more power over less attacks. But if you persona ride Vivace, You win. I have never lost a game of Persona Road Vivace. It has not happened. If I get that far, I win every time. So I felt like even though I might not have a playset of the new strong Leonore, I figured that in a slower kind of metagame where a lot of my friends were playing Prison this weekend, that if they're going to play a long game with that deck, then I can feel relatively confident having a turn 5 win condition, because you have to spend your first 3 turns riding up, then your turn 4 cross riding, and then on your 5th turn you Persona ride Vivace, and then you win. But stride decks can last that long, so I figured if as long as I applied some of my philosophies with how I've built my stride decks, then I should be able to have the kind of defense I need in order to last that long. Because standard can be quite aggressive, as my loss will show you. It can be very all in on the early game, so it's important to have a good early game, but also to have good shields per se, so that we can last as long as we need to. So how did I do that? Aside from the lands we have here, for trying to live a long time, I chose for Twin Cast as the Regalist piece. I was playing an entire playset of the Energy Guncycler to draw extra cards. I don't think I effectively leveraged my resources for energy usage. I felt like I could have played a little more, but it got a little awkward with how I was rationing things. The new Leonore costs Energy Blast 2, which can be really awkward with how many energy cards you want to play in your deck. I wasn't sure if I should be playing 7 or 6, or before in the old Leonore version I was playing 8 because I was comfortable paying a counterblast cost, and I still was, so I felt like I could have gotten away with one more energy card, one more energy blasting card. So I had 3 Alvinas, but I maybe could have had a 4th Alvina, but it was tough to fit in the 4 Alvinas because I was playing the Soul Blast Resurrection Girl, the Concert of Many Emotions, I believe her name is. Yeah. Parseia, who, since we have a Vanguard who starts in Unison Dress instead of needing to wait till turn 4 to get Unison Dress, she becomes online guaranteed on turn 3. So I was even tempted to play a playset of her, but then 8 of these grade 1s that resurrect something seemed like too many, especially since Parseia was kind of the better one anyway, because Parseia lets you resurrect anything, whereas Alvina only lets you get grade 1s. Alvina lets you get orders, but I decided not to really play any orders in this deck, so I probably could have better optimized the grade 1 lineup I was playing. But I was struggling to fit in everything because I don't like having only 3 copies of the Rhythm of Joy Alentis. She's our floater and our countercharger, and I felt like it's really important to see her in the deck. If you see one, you can kind of keep looping it every turn. You can use all of your counterblasts and double dip on a lot of them and get to draw a lot of extra cards throughout the game that you wouldn't if you didn't see her. I don't like having 3 because you only need to see 1 copy of her, but if you aren't playing 4, you are a little bit less likely to see one, and it's very important to me to see one because then we can use these to kind of like loop them, where turn after turn we call one, it floats, next turn it comes back from drop zone, it floats, the next turn it comes back from drop zone, and we can just keep pushing in. I wanted to play more, but I just kind of ran out of space. As we close out here, there are 12 slots left, and they went by pretty fast because I was playing a playset of Rosarium Fairy, one of the most key cards in the deck, and only 2 of the new grade 2 version of Rosarium Fairy, where she has the skill to copy one of your back row units if you're in Unison Dress, which you are, so it's fine. If your opponent's grade 3, so she's not faster than Rosarium Fairy. They're both live going 2nd turn 3 or going 1st turn 4. But she lets you counterblast to draw or soul blast to make a plant, and that can be pretty nice. I was tempted to go for like a 3-3 split or to cut something else to make room for a 3rd of her. I really wanted 3, but I just couldn't find the space. When I was playing a playset of the Searcher for Leonore, since I don't have any Persona rides for the base form. It's kind of important to get to Vivace on turn 4. So having a searcher to help us find the Vivace, and then the Persona ride to close out the game in a quick manner on turn 4 and 5. It felt like it was really important to play the whole playset of this card. And then the last 2 slots that I could have gotten rid of to fit in the extra cards I wanted, but I felt like it was really important for me to be playing this card because I at one point had 4, and it just felt completely wrong to take it out completely. I had the Pride Cycler, or the Rainbow Cycler, or the Persona Shield Cycler, whatever you want to call them. See Rainbow Dragon here, who lets you make that Persona Shield, which felt really clutch. I was playing a version of this that had a whole playset of him, and he was really nice. I didn't want to just get rid of him completely, especially since for this weekend the metagame had a lot of prison, and when they're trying to imprison your cards and they try and hand rip you to get to the count they want for their push, feeding them a Persona Shield ticket can really help slow them down and make it much more difficult for them to hit another breakpoint on the power they give their front row. Because even if you keep your prison completely empty, they can still just exude more pressure than you can keep up with if you haven't been effectively building an advantage. Because they get quite a lot of power from doing very little. This was the 50 cards I ended up on for the main deck. There's, of course, perfect guards and triggers. I did something a little silly where I was playing 1 draw trigger and 2 fronts, which was pretty weird. I wasn't disappointed with it. I wasn't blown away either. I do like is that I left a draw trigger in there because you check a lot of your deck throughout the course of the game, and a lot of the time I wanted to have just like 1 more card in rotation. But I still, with how many cards I draw, I want to have higher shield values on average if I'm trying to live longer. So I thought having a draw still left that potential for oh man, I just need 1 more card. Then you can get lucky and you can draw 1 more card. It was a thing I would used to do in V a lot. Like in my Grand Blue deck, I would play 1 draw trigger, 1 draw perfect guard. Partly for the fact that it was a main deck perfect guard, and most of the time we were playing crits instead or grade 1s. But having that 1 extra draw, you would see it a surprising amount of games in a tournament run, and it ended up being pretty clutch. However, the list was not the issue I ran in to during my tournament run. The lead up to it and all my practice games, things were going pretty smooth. Like, yeah, I feel like this list could use little optimizations here and there. I get that maybe you could get rid of the Persona Shield card because it was a meta call. I feel like you could probably change the deck to work around the new Leonarn by doing something like cutting 2 Vivaces and 1 of the Searcher, so that we have the new Leonarn, so that we have 5 Leonorns in the deck, which seems a little strange at first, but I thought it was kind of a neat idea, because then you still have 2 Vivaces in your deck for you find Vivace, you ride up, and then at some point during the game, if the game goes long, you will find the second copy, so you can still Persona ride Vivace and win, but you can have a very consistent, impressive power spike on your turn 4. Because riding Vivace it sounds really spooky, but if your opponent's not at a high damage count, it isn't, because they check a defensive and then your turn is really weak. Whereas if you Persona ride on Traumwood, or whatever the new one's called, then you can have a pretty spooky turn. I was thinking about trying to play Zorga in the ride deck so that I could have access to Gather Upon Me Ye Wandering Souls, so that I could swing with base Leonarn with 4 drive checks, restand, put a Leonarn in Soul Sing with 2 drive checks, and get 6 drive checks in 1 turn. That's crazy. But I just didn't have enough time to put everything together before the tournament. I've been pretty busy lately, so I just took the path of least resistance with putting my deck together. I just built around the Vivaces I already had and the things I know work, and I just tried to modernize it with some of these cyclers, because it let me pretty efficiently put together a board to attack with early on in the game, because if we're going second, we have quite a lot of cards that let us build an aggressive board. If we're going second, we have the energy to draw a card, or we have the energy for Alvina, so we can discard one of our 13 grade 1s and then call one of our resurrection pieces to then call a card back. So we could have a pretty neat opening where when we ride to grade 1, shoot, we get 8 plant token, which I had been putting behind my Vanguard. I learned that it's probably best to put it behind a rearguard so that you can build effective tri-lanes. Because if you want one behind your Vanguard, you have 6 cards that'll get you new ones, so it doesn't matter too much. We could do something like pitch Rosarium Fairy to ride, and then use Alvina to call Rosarium Fairy. Probably something like this. And Rosarium Fairy sacks a plant. It makes 2 plants. We change positions. And then we pretty effectively build an aggressive board. And then on our next turn, we still have this Alvina that can attack unboosted, since we have enough cards on our board. But we still have an empty slot if we want to continue playing aggressive and building our board, because we have 8 cards, 8 grade 2s that we want to call now. We have our Searchers for Leonarn. We have Rosarium Fairy, the grade 2 version. We have a Persona Shield Cyclers, who are better to call than to discard. But if we have, if our board's gonna be full, it's fine to discard them. But you get more value out of them over in the long run, usually, by calling them instead of discarding them. Usually. But that lets us pretty easily build an aggressive board. So even though our win con is kind of late, we can still make our opponent block a lot by making it so that before we've ridden a grade 3, we've already threatened lethal by attacking 6 times. And when we ride Trummood, it'll be pretty easy for us to have some real threat. We can put a Rosarium Fairy in the front row. And we can quickly make something quite strong. Like we put our 15k in our back row here, and then Rosarium Fairy will get the 15 from that, making it 23, which is pretty spooky. And then when we restand it with Trummood, it'll be 33, which is a very difficult block for our opponents to make. I was playing on hard mode all day. I didn't, all weekend actually, as I was prepping for the event too. I didn't ever give anything plus 10 off of Trummood when she restands herself and the rearguard. They both get plus 10, but I wasn't doing that. I was just swinging 13, no drives. So scary. I don't feel like it would have changed too many of my games in practice, but I feel like it would have made things flow a lot better, and I wouldn't have needed to play so defensively a lot of the time, because then on this turn I can make a lot of pressure and make them discard a lot of shield cards, so that when I do ride Vivace, sometimes they are at 5, so they can't check a defensive and shut the turn down, and then we can effectively leverage a lot of pressure, and then it's easier to live to the turn 5 where we Persona ride, because our opponent has had to discard a lot of cards to block the pressure we've been exerting over the course of the game. Now this is all pretty standard stuff. I felt like I had done a pretty good job with most of my technical play. I was able to pretty handily win my first round of the tournament against Prison by using the Prison as a way to get my grade 1s in rotation and recur my floating grade 1 that counter charges. It's pretty neat because the counterblast that it costs frees 2 cards from Prison, and then it counter charges and gets itself off of the board, so it can effectively lower your Prison count, and you can loop it without having to deal with too much interruption. Like, yeah, they can turn off your on play skills, but by having really nice on attack skills, we can end up using the Prison effectively against them by feeding them persona shields and plant tokens and constantly using my resources to keep the Prison empty. I was able to very handily win that game. The Prison being empty is very important because their block that perfect guards rear guards, they're like grade 2 or less or whatever, is really backbreaking against our deck when our main threat is our rear guards. I mean, big Leonorn Vanguard Swing is threatening, but they have a perfect guard for that and not for our 2 rear guard swing. But then they have their in archetype rear guard perfect guards. I forget what her name is. It's like purple something, violet something. They can perfect guard for a pretty cheap cost. But if they have if their Prison is empty, they cannot do it. So by doing our best to, over the course of the game, spending our resources to free the Prison so that they don't have like a huge one stacked up that we can't break through before our push turn, then it gets us there. The slow buildup of using our plant tokens and then like calling Rosarium Fairy from hand, sacrifice one of the, like a trigger or something they force into Prison so that we can call 2 plant tokens, because Persona Shield and tokens can't exist in the Prison. They can go to it, but once they reach it, they fizzle out. They meet their erase zone, and so they disappear. So I was very happy that what I had built the deck to do, it did. I took apart that Prison deck. I absolutely crushed them. I had played against Prison the previous day, and I felt like I had made some mistakes I had learned from, so that part was nice. To see the work and tech I did for Prison was really paying off. Give me 1 second to have some of this tea here. Talking can be a lot on my throat. This could be a good time to leave a comment if you haven't already. Tell me what I could do to improve my videos. And don't tell me to edit them. I'm not going to do that. Maybe one day I can hire an editor, but for now, just to reduce the barrier to entry, just like Wolfie VGC used to do, I'm not going to edit my videos at all. Yeah, I would love to edit the cards I'm talking about on screen for everybody to look at, but it's just not for me. So, I'm all shuffled up here because what I learned was a simple lesson, but it ended up being a pretty brutal one. Round 2, I was playing against a friend of mine who was playing Java, and they were playing it with no persona rides because they're kind of a budget player. And they're just a teenager, not high schooler. Maybe they're in college now, I'm not sure. They're a kid who's been around the shop a lot. I know them quite well. And they do their best to play really well. They had put together a relatively competent list for the weekend. And I was proud to see them execute their strategy pretty well. But their win didn't end up having to do too much with their side of the table. It did. If their deck was built poorly and they weren't able to play aggressively the first few turns, I think I would have been able to stabilize that game and win. But they were successfully able to leverage going, I believe they went first. Yeah, they did. They were able to effectively leverage going first to threaten lethal before I had ridden up to grade 3 by building up 3 lanes, tri-laning me, starting on their second turn, the first time they had a battle phase. They were able to effectively push through by using their Mirror of Irina for countercharge and whatnot. But what happened from my end is I took my opening hand. I was like, yeah, this hand is decent. It's fine, but there's no Vivace in it. Or there's no searcher for Vivace, and I'm going to need to find one in order to close out this game. My deck is very good at producing good hands. I have so many cards that draw me more cards, even if the hand isn't fine. I'll dig into something to make it work. So I put 5 back, and then I drew 3 triggers and 2 perfect cards. And then for the turn, draw a trigger, pitch to ride, draw from going second, get a trigger, swing Vanguard, check a draw trigger, draw a front trigger, something like that. I have all this shield, but I have nothing to call. And as the game went on, all of my damage checks were the cards I wanted to call, and all of my draws were more shield pieces, drawing cards like Twin Cast, heals, more perfect cards. It ended up being pretty brutal. I couldn't, when I rode to grade 3 Leonor, I only had 1 unit in my hand that I could call to rearguard. I mean, like, yeah, I could call a heal or a perfect guard, but that's kind of throwing. I mean, I guess calling the heal would have cycled itself, but considering how many triggers I had already seen, that was making me lose shield value. So it was pretty brutal to just have to, in my deck full of cards to help me build a board, to just plant token boosts, swing rearguard, pass turn, because I couldn't do anything. A player might look at that and think, oh, I lost because I got unlucky. And I did. That is objectively quite unlucky. But winning in Vanguard is about more than just getting lucky or unlucky. It's about navigating the storm of luck, of all the things that can go, playing around everything, everywhere, all at once. And I didn't play around never drawing a callable rearguard. In my opening hand of 5 cards, I had that grade 2 Rosarium Fairy, who would have been able to almost certainly get me out of the bind I was in if I had kept it. So I've added a new little rule to my opening mulligans. I feel like a lot of games, your mulligan decisions are extremely important and impactful to the outcome of the game. But a lot of the time we just like completely brush off those decisions as, well, that wasn't part of the game. The game was everything that happened after the mulligan. But how you do your redraws is quite important. And over time, I've found that adding little tips and tricks to my mulligans has helped me a lot. I've started, like, if I go second, if I have a perfect card in my opening hand, I'll almost always keep it, because a lot of things can go wrong. So having that nice little stopgap with a perfect card can really help slow things down if your opponent is like checking nice crits or something like that. They swing really big and they check their over trigger. It can just have a nice way of helping stabilize a game that could be lost. But I don't necessarily do that going first. So I've started to, my takeaway from my brutal loss at never drawing anything to call to rearguard was that if you have an opening hand that you are considering sending 5 back, like you're playing a deck like this, or another example could be like Heart Luru, where you kind of don't care what's in your opening hand, you just need to see one particular card, like the Toys Are Made for Children, then Like on Harluru, if I don't see toys, I'll usually send my entire hand back looking for toys. But sometimes, like in that deck too, I'll end up kind of bricked, where I'll draw a bunch of shield cards and I won't be able to do anything. Where the deck is built around having an aggressive early game. And so is this deck. This deck is built around having an aggressive early game, and you need to ride Vivace. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck on base Leonore, which is a fine card, I guess. But it's not that strong. Especially when you compare it to restanding 3 units. Only restanding 2 is like a little bit less interesting, I guess. Not to say that the new Leonore isn't good, but I don't know, I really like Vivace. So this deck was built around her. So normally if like, let's say I don't have this Vivace. I had this perfect guard and I was going first. Then I would be really tempted to just, oh, well, I don't need any of these cards. I'm just going to send everything to the bottom and draw 5 more cards. And then, yeah, if we look at the next 5, in a relatively typical fashion, it's not great, but we do have Vivace, and we have Rosarian Fairy, who will draw us a card, make us a plant, let it so we can tri-lane, because if we have our Vanguard, who makes a plant, and we ride up to grade 2, instead of making the plant behind my Vanguard, like I keep doing on autopilot, you want to put it on the sideline, so that if the only action card you draw is the grade 2, that you can make a second plant token, and then now you've effectively built your tri-lane, so that you can swing 10, swing 10, swing 10. You could have like 2 15k lanes instead, but it just doesn't feel as impactful, especially if you're trying to play defensive. Having a setup like this can make it like, all right, contest your rear guard. Oh, you blocked it because it was important. Well, now you're not getting any counterblast. Swing, swing. I go plus. Your momentum is down, and then I'm in a good position from there. Which is how things could have gone against the Java deck, but I didn't have rear guards to call, so I couldn't effectively contest the side lanes. So I was just caught dead in the water. Like, I didn't have the Vivace on my grade 4 turn anyway, so it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. But as you saw, yeah, that hand was fine, but it really easily could have been not fine. Imagine if I don't draw that Rosarian Fairy and I draw a perfect guard instead, then I'm stuck with no action. So instead of doing something like that, just to randomize things, I should keep a action card to build my, it's like a central piece of my early game strategy, because the early game is really important in Standard. Well, I guess in Vanguard in general. Having an early lead, like an early, just like 1 or 2 more damage, can make it so at the end of the game, one of those big 100 million swings, they can't just no-guard it, right? They have to take it. When you swing Vivace for 69, they can't just be like, you're like out of crits, no guard, you know? Having each damage really matters, so being able to build up an early lead is pretty good. I mean, in this particular hand, I don't know what I would do, but just to say, to keep in line with how I was doing things, if I was going first, you know, I put back all those because I don't need the perfect card going first. I'm going to draw so many cards. Surely I'll find another one. But I keep one piece of action so that I'm not caught like dead in the water doing nothing. Just going right swing pass, right swing pass. Because it is always possible to not find other pieces of action again. It's possible. I've seen a friend of mine in Top Cut in Premium drew like a third of his deck, but then he drew like literally all of his triggers. Never found. Oh no! He drew a third of his deck, but he never found another trigger. He found one trigger in like 16 cards. He just needed to see a trigger to block that last attack on tap. He didn't need to check it. He just needed to have seen it anywhere in the top third of his deck. But no, he never found one, and he died. So sometimes you run into crazy situations like that, and yeah, playing around those 1 in 1,000 scenarios is pretty... it's not much in the grand scheme of things. But something I learned from playing other competitive games is that the difference between like a gold player and a platinum player in certain games is not like, oh man, the platinum players do this one weird trick where they always blah blah. It's usually a culmination of a lot of little things. Over the course of the game, they make lots and lots of small decisions slightly better than their lower ranked peer. And then over the course of the game, those add up to be a high win rate. And I think that's extremely true for Vanguard. We make lots and lots of little decisions. What do we mulligan? Do I call this on this lane? Should I block this one? Should I take this? Lots and lots and lots of little decisions that add up over time. So by having just another notch on our tool belt, we just remove another layer with our sandpaper. We sand ourselves down to be a beautiful and wonderful player. And look, this hand is fine. And we have what could be a pretty slow hand with it. We hope we draw a good card. Yeah, this will float, but like on turn 3 in some shield. We're able to use this shield to defend our tri-lane. We're able to have a lot of pressure with this card that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. So it makes it, even though it's not an ideal hand, we still have a good hand. 3, 4, 5. Rosarium Fairy, 2 Parseas, twin cast, front trigger. Again, I would send 5 back, but we're practicing keeping Rosarium Fairy so that we can effectively build some powerful lanes. We draw Vivace, second Rosarium Fairy, a Cycler. This is a great hand. And having a second Rosarium Fairy is pretty nice. I don't think I mentioned when I was doing the review that part of the reason we have 4 Rosarium Fairies and 2 of the grade 2 that do something similar is because it's really nice to have 2 of the cards like this. 2 like either 2 Rosarium Fairies, 1 Rosarium Fairy in the grade 2, 2 of the grade 2s, but with 6 of them and then 6 cards to resurrect it. I felt like it was going to be pretty easy for me to have the double. Especially at 6 copies, I would usually have 2 Rosarium Fairies, but I wish I had made room for a third of the grade 2, because it's just so much better than I was initially expecting it to be. This next hand here, we have a lot of defense, 2 Searchers, a Perfect Guard, and a crit, and since we're going first, we're going to put away our extra defense, because when we draw a lot of cards, we'll usually end up finding it. And would you look at that, our hand ended up being basically exactly the same. It's not a bad hand. It has cards for us to call. It has shield. Doesn't have much we can complain about. Our next hand, we have 2 crits, Perfect Guard, Alvina. Again, I would consider shipping the entire thing. But I'm going to try keeping the Sea Rainbow Dragon to see how that works out for us. Because at least it'll be something I can call the rear guard to do something with. Like in this hand like this, I wouldn't pitch the Cycler trying to ride up and be like, well, I'll get the most value and surely I'll draw something else to discard so I don't have to pitch one of these crits. Nah. This is as much shield as a crit or a heal. But it lets us play a lot more aggressively, because if we on our turn 2, like let's say we draw something that oh yeah, I don't mind pitching that. But on our turn 2 when it's time to pitch, we could pitch a card with 15k shield and have and then leave this to call, which gives us the Persona Shield ticket for 10 and the Intercept for 5. So it's 15, but it can block 2 attacks and it does attack. It's just much better than pitching this, and then instead of we gain 5k shield in total because we lost 5 but we gained 10, so overall it's plus 5k shield. So yeah, we have like 20k shield total, but we have no attacker and our deck wants to be attacking. So this hand, which could have been very easily dead, we draw a Vivace or a Perfect Guard or something, having this, as much as it may or may not have, like we would have drawn Revering for, but we can't know that. That's just what it was this time. Perhaps You could sit down and do all the math, be like, what cards are you most likely to draw? But I didn't have time to create super fancy graphs or anything for this weekend. Again, it was a deck I put together pretty quickly. But you can still learn a lot from things like that. This hand, it's not great, but Parseia will make it so that any random things we draw and then decide we want to discard, we can bring back pretty quickly, and then we can still effectively build a board later. I think I end up being relatively glad that I keep the cycler there. This hand is probably a keep. It's not great, but we have a cycler to discard, we have a searcher for Vivace, we've got 2 powerful grade 1s, and we still have shield. So that's a hand that I would probably not get too greedy with, and I would keep. Next up, crit, cycler, 2 Vivaces, and the grade 2. I'll probably put back just a Vivace, because if I put back this crit, it's quite possible I don't draw anything else with shield, and I'm kind of caught with my pants down. I can get ran over. Drawing a second Vivace is a little pain, but going first, we would probably have time to, before we get pressured too much, we could cycle this away with grade 3 Leonore, so it's not a big deal. The new Leonore lets you, when she restands, you can feed her a Leonore, and then she gets to keep a drive check. As we went through our whole deck just there, every single one of our hands was playable. Some of those hands that very easily could have been completely dead in the water, because we just kept one card that lets us have an early game, especially going first, we're going to have access to less cards. We are more able to normalize that randomness, that we can draw, instead of having 5 random cards, which, you know, we're desperately digging for something. So we get 1 extra peek, because we're going to draw 4 cards or 5 cards. We get diminishing returns on those amount of cards we draw, if I'm not mistaken. We get that extra look, but that extra look is just as likely, well, not just as likely, 1/3 of the time, 2/5 of the time, counting some of your grade 3s, it can even almost be like half the time in some decks. That card you draw will not be an action piece. It will not let you create an early advantage. It just kind of either blocks or is waiting for a later turn in the game. Having something to do early is really important. Even if it's just 1 card, having an empty board versus having a second column can double your amount of early game output, and then just having that 1 more damage in makes it so that that last turn when you swing big with Rosarium Fairy, instead of saying, well, it doesn't have crit, no guard, go to 5, I'm chilling, it's, oh no, I'm at 5, I can't block that, I die. It all adds up over the course of the game. Those early turns matter a lot. A lot. I don't recall what happened round 3. I remember crushing my opponent pretty quickly. Sorry. I pretty quickly crushed them, and then we were gonna play a round 4, but Alicia, who was paired down into a prison player, gave them a 3 to pass the 3rd time in a row, and eventually they went for it every single time, and eventually they just broke it, and she was like, that's only a blah 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 blah. She had a perfect guard and this and that. It's like, yeah, there was only a 10% chance that they break that, and I'm like, yeah, there was a 10% chance they broke it that turn, and there was a 10% chance they broke it the turn before that, because their deck had been like 50% triggers for a long time. She was like, but I saw so many triggers, and I'm like, that shouldn't have happened. I'm like, you saw so many, but still half of their deck was triggers, so I don't think you were being very objective. She got her back broken, of course, by when you give somebody a 3 to pass and they break it, then all of your shield just kind of meant nothing. It evaporates, you take 2 on the dome, and you usually die, and that's exactly what happened. Where she probably very easily could have won that game if she had just perfect guarded, but she had convinced herself that the game was going to go on longer than it would. Just a takeaway from her game would be to remember to play your opponent If you see that they're willing to gamble on a 3 to pass every single time, maybe, just maybe, if it's about to be the end of the game, you could consider perfect guarding that. But like you're afraid to like swing rear pass, again, play your opponent. Some players aren't about swinging rear pass, you know? Some players play defensively, some players play aggressively, some players, they've been like, you can tell that they've been trying to make you go to 5 for a long time, so that maybe when it's finally opportunity where you could be worried that they usually don't change their tempo that quick, unless you're playing against somebody who you can tell is up to that sort of stuff. You have to be able to know when to play fast and slow, and there, I feel like she lost because she didn't properly adapt to her opponent's pace of play. She built a huge advantage, and she was trying to hold on to that advantage instead of break through. I feel like she convinced herself, or their opponent had one of those big shield cards and just, well, I don't need to use it, so I'm not going to, instead of just realizing, oh, they don't have the big shield. Otherwise, they would have used it instead of negging so freaking hard to block that swing. Especially when she spends so long emptying all of the prison, and she spent so long contesting everything with orders and extra souls and this and that. I watched her soul blast one to activate the prison to call nothing, even though it was empty, just to empty her soul, which is a cute little tech. But playing like that the whole game then led her to think that, oh, this is going to be a slow game. And it was, I suppose. But you have to be able to know when it's time to really just end things. And I felt like she believed the game could go on a little longer than it could, because she's so used to games that can go to like near deck out where everybody's really defensive. But against some decks just have inevitability, like they just will win eventually. And Prison's kind of one of those decks. Eventually it just runs you out of stuff, and you have to be able to effectively attack them while dealing with their control of the game to make it so that they can't really just walk away with things. Prison is a very beatable deck. It's not like it's crazy. I've played against it with Heart Luru, which I was training a friend of mine with before Pasadena. They're like, oh, I'm going to play, not Pasadena, for Vancouver this weekend. They're like, oh, I'm going to play Prison. Show me how the Heart Luru matchup goes. And then I systematically used the Prison against them to like build absolutely disgusting boards very quickly, to leverage all of my resources, and then like reuse on place effects, filter this, do that, and then still leave it so that they don't get the big crits. And then like I just exert so much pressure that even though you can perfect guard my big giant fluffy, Heart Luru is just so annoying that you're just forced to say no guard. And then the classic Heart Luru thing, you say no guard to them at 3, they check 2 crits, and then you die. You can beat that deck, the Prison deck. It is beatable, but you have to do a lot of things. The ball gets placed in your court as the opponent, and I felt like I did a great job when the ball was in my court, using my Persona Shields and my plant tokens in this deck, or using giant fluffies and what's it called? Toys Are Made for Children, that I was able to effectively use the agency that the Prison gives you in order to build an advantage. That's where you can really make a huge difference against that deck. You can't do that with every deck, of course. I'm pretty sure Vergilia and the Buddy Fight decks really, really struggle. But most of the time, the ball ends up being in your court, and you have to know how to handle the ball. What are you going to do with it? You have to make a play, otherwise they will eventually run over you. They have a lot of inevitability. They are not the beatdown. You have to be the beatdown. You need to end the game before you are ran out of resources, because eventually you won't have the soul or the counterblast to free your cards from your prison, and they're just going to keep hitting you with that grade 4 turn after turn after turn as they recycle it and they soul blast it and they rewrite it and then they write one from hand and it's just over and over and over. Eventually you just can't keep up. You have to play with urgency. There is a clock that they have. That clock might not be very obvious. It might not be on the board per se, but eventually you will lose unless you win. Wow. So you have to find those lines to victory. You need to see your winning image. You have to build a winning image. And yeah, maybe this deck I put together this weekend wasn't like the most optimal thing ever, but even if the deck was perfectly optimized, I would have probably still lost that round, round 2. It doesn't matter what deck you're playing. Every deck has the same number of triggers and perfect cards. Any deck can go mull 5, draw 5, oh shit, 3 triggers, 2 PGs, and then every time you draw, it's just more shield and no more action. That can happen to any deck. So even if my deck was perfectly optimized for this or that, I still would have lost that. But what I did have that let me absolutely dismantle the 2 players that I did bait against was my winning image. Unison Dress, Persona Ride. You lose. I see my win con. My win con is Persona Ride Vivace, and every time I Persona Ride Vivace, they died. And the time I died, I didn't get to Persona Ride Vivace. Obviously. Well, maybe not that obviously. When playing against an aggressive deck, you have to be able to play aggressive back. Sometimes. If they are rushing you, you can effectively counter rush them, or you can clear their side lanes, whichever one seems more appropriate in the particular situation. Because no guarding is a kind of plus. Like, you normally attacks you are like kind of an interaction. Like if I attack your rear guard, then you're about to lose a card. You know, if I attack your vanguard and you guard, you're about to lose a card. But if instead of having to nag, you say no guard and you get like a little plus, you can counter rush them so that they run out of those pluses. But if you build that same board to counter rush, you just call some friends from our drop zone. Then we are able to clear those side lanes instead without giving them the option to plus, because a lot of aggressive decks don't have much plussing. They can't generate advantage the same way a lot of grindier decks can. So if then you can not give them that opportunity, just like, okay, I clear your prayer dragon, okay, I clear your restander. Then when it comes around to next turn, they're out of stuff. Like they cross overdress really early on. It's like, okay, you invested 2 cards to make that card work, so now I'm just going to attack it, and now instead of giving you the option of just like taking everything and getting a bunch of resources, because then you can then use that counterblast that you gained. Not only do you get the plus of saying no guard, but then you get to turn it face down and draw an extra card. So it really can be a plus instead of just like a 0. Instead of just not negging, you can literally turn that counterblast into advantage. So you can swing at their rears and slow things down. Or if you're playing against a deck like Prison, and like, yeah, sure, they've called some stuff, but you don't really care about their rear guards, then okay, all those things you made me put in my prison and I have to get out, I will just fill my board and I'm going to run every single attack at your face. And eventually they're like, oh yeah, I'll just like take this, my end game is really good. But then at the end of the game, your prison is still empty from feeding them things that are easy to clear and then religiously clearing your prison. Then you can make it so at those end games, they're out of that little plussing option. Because yeah, it's a plus to say no guard until it loses you the game. You only get so many. And by making it so that they get to negate having to pay like 10k shield, because you ran them out of triggers. It's a lot better than having them being able to negate Rosarium attacking for 63 or something stupid. All in all, while I am frustrated with my loss, I felt like I was able to learn a valuable lesson and share it with y'all, so in the end it wasn't so bad. I have lots of mats, and the Aurora mat was very cute this year, but I basically always use this one anyway, so I'm not bent out of shape. The player that won, I was really happy for them. They've been playing really well recently. I don't think they would have been able to beat me or Alicia, but still, I'm proud that they were able to beat everybody else that they did beat. They are just an absolute little sweetheart, and I was really happy to see them win the tournament this weekend. So all in all, it was a nice time. Now I got to have a little bit of fun pulling Leonor off of the shelf. I got to see the fruition of my efforts against Prison. That deck, it's kind of how good it is. A lot of it depends on how good the opponent is. So if you were considering playing it for a large tournament, just remember that's the kind of deck that can help you make it to top cut. But once you are in top cut, you probably will not win the whole tournament. You will find players who, once you give them the ball, will just style all over you with it. Like I was able to do with Trevin when he was practicing. Poor guy. So just another rule for your mulligans. Do not, if you have the option to have a piece of action in your hand, even when you're sending 5 back looking for an important piece, you want to keep some action, especially going first. Going second, it still holds true, just like how you want to keep a perfect guard. Sometimes even if you want to send 5 back, it can be very important to hold on to a perfect guard so things don't go wrong, and an aggressive piece so that you can take advantage of the fact that you are going second. Going second offers you catch-up mechanics, you just need to take them. You need to take the blessings you are given. When you are given good cards, if you have a hand of a lot of good cards, your next 5 cards are less likely to be those good cards. That's how the math of it works. Because they're about to be on the bottom of your deck, not on the top. So when you are doing aggressive mulliganing, only send back all 5 if none of them are going to be efficient for your early game. You need to keep something. I've been practicing with that on the other games I've been playing since then. And it's, as we saw with the exercise here on camera and with the other games I was playing, that little change goes a long way. Again, ranking up in some other games, you know, if you want to go from gold and rank up, you need to start doing a lot of little things. You need to keep refining your game, like a wood sculpture, like that wood. You just keep carving off bits off the top. You just keep working it down, and you sand it down, and you keep doing little changes, and eventually, over time, all of those little things add up to something big. Like I've played against a lot of the big names, you know. In BRO, I've played against like a world champion. And you know, they bleed. They're not like you play against them and it's not like, wow, this guy's on some other planet of Vanguard. I could never. No, they're doing a lot of the things that a normal player would do. They just do them faster. They do them sometimes a little better. They do a little extra little thing here and there. Oh, I'm gonna play around your heal triggers. And speaking of heal triggers, that's a great place to wrap things up, because the next video I want to do, I would like to talk about how you can resolve more heal triggers without stacking your deck. To keep things under an hour, I've rambled on plenty just to hit that nice 1 hour mark. And we all love my videos to be, we all love the podcast around here. So that's been it from me. I hope you enjoyed listening to my tournament report podcast, I suppose. Tune in next time So hopefully I can have something exciting for y'all. All right, everybody. Peace out, spread love, and be kind.